Shui Sai quelled the bandit rebellion and achieved great merit. The first thing he did upon triumphantly returning to the capital was to come to my house with great fanfare to break off the engagement. When I received the news in the inner courtyard, I initially paid it no mind, truly worthy of the young General Shui, who is currently in the Emperor's favor. Even a marriage bestowed by the Empress Dowager can be called off at will, just as I was wondering what excuse Shui Sai would use. He had already started shouting outside my family's gate. The Lu family's daughter is restless in her home, fickle and wanton. I, Shui Sai, will never marry such a woman of corrupt character into my household. I am puzzled. Shui Sai's arrival was truly unexpected. With neither a formal visiting card nor any prior announcement, he simply arrived with a group of soldiers and knocked on the door of my family's home. My mother was initially quite pleased to hear he had come. Thinking this future son-in-law was truly considerate, he had just returned to the capital and already knew to visit his future father-in-law's home. It wasn't until a group of people barged into the main courtyard that my mother and sister-in-law were left standing there in a daze. Mr. Shui, what do you mean by this? Shui Sai, clad in military attire, exuded a formidable presence. Though he bowed to my mother, his expression was haughty. Madam Lu, I have come today to break off the engagement. My mother was truly startled. If not for my eldest sister-in-law supporting her, she would have nearly lost her balance. Call off the engagement. Shui Sai's attitude was resolute. Exactly. I must ask Madame Lu to return my name card, and from now on, let us not mention this marriage again. Shui Sai's actions were utterly disrespectful. Even my sister-in-law, who has such a gentle temperament, was so angered that her expression changed. Mr. Shui, the marriage between you and my sister was personally decreed by the late Empress Dowager. Now, your Shui family has neither elders stepping forward nor a mediator to negotiate. How dare you, a mere junior, barge into my Lu family in broad daylight with your soldiers to break off the engagement? You Shui family are simply going too far. Shui Sai himself knew this was wrong, but the opportunity was too rare to pass up. Faced with my sister-in-law's questioning, Shui Sai held his head high and refused to yield an inch. Young mistress, although my actions may not be in accordance with the rules, they are not without reason. Not inviting the elders and not troubling the matchmaker is truly saving face for your Lu family. If Madame Lu and the young mistress know what's good for them, they should obediently call off the engagement today. Otherwise, if this scandal gets out, it will be your Lu family that loses face. My mother tightly held my sister-in-law's hand and looked solemnly at Shui Sai. Oh, then I must ask young Master Shui to explain clearly. What disgraceful thing has my Lu family done? Shui Sai pursed his lips, knowing that if he didn't intimidate the women of the Lu family, this matter would not end well today. He glanced around and, under everyone's puzzled gazes, pulled out 2 items from his pocket. Madame Lu, is this your daughter's handkerchief? My mother was taken aback for a moment before stepping forward to take it. My sister-in-law also carefully confirmed that it was indeed mine. Shui Sai was quite pleased with himself and quickly seized the opportunity to press his advantage. If it were just the handkerchief, I could have let it go, thinking Miss Lu might have lost it by accident. Now take a look at this letter. It's clear proof of her secret correspondence with another man, the renowned young lady of the general's mansion. So celebrated in the capital, turns out to be so wanton behind the scenes. You Lu family certainly know how to raise a daughter. My sister-in-law snatched the letter from his hand, trembling as she opened it to confirm, with just one glance. My sister-in-law's expression changed. This was indeed my handwriting as well. My mother took the 2 pieces of evidence in her hands, her voice trembling with disbelief. Impossible. This can't be. My daughter is not that kind of person. You're slandering her. Shui Sai sneered coldly. Oh, then does Madame Lu dare to let me spread this matter far and wide? See if people outside will believe me slandering my own fiancé without any evidence, or if they'll believe that the women of your Lu family are unchaste and fickle. My mother was forced to retreat step by Shui Sai. Although she trusted my character, she also knew that this matter must never be made public. Once my reputation is ruined, the truth doesn't matter at all. Such romantic affairs are the most talked about. Even a bodhisattva or a fairy would be dragged into the mud by gossip. By then, my life would be completely ruined. Shui Sai looked down at my mother and sister-in-law as they fell into a painful dilemma, continuing to mock them. Madam Lu, please. Let's go out and let everyone judge for themselves. Fine. Please lead the way, young Master Shui. Under the astonished gazes of everyone, I walked out with composure. As soon as Shui Sai saw me, his expression immediately changed. You actually dare to show your face, I sneered, sensing his bluster and inner weakness. Master Shui, how can you say that? You keep slandering my reputation, yet you won't allow me to step forward and defend myself. Shui Sai glanced at the three women from my inner household and seemed to regain some of his confidence. Miss Lu, you're not going to say all these things are fake, are you? I gently reassured my mother and sister-in-law. Then took the so-called evidence myself. The handkerchief is real, but I never gave it to anyone. I'm not afraid of it being investigated. As for this letter, the handwriting does bear some resemblance to mine. Shui Sai became even more pleased with himself. Doesn't this prove that Miss Lu has questionable character? Miss Lu, I'm kindly reminding you that if we call off the engagement today, no one else will know about this matter. But once this gets out, even if the evidence is questionable, your reputation will be completely ruined. If you don't marry me, there are plenty of other noble families to choose from. But if your reputation is ruined, I'm afraid you'll end up alone for the rest of your life. I looked at Shui Sai's handsome face, which was twisted into such a sinister expression, and it truly turned my stomach. Master Shui is truly eloquent with his words. If you truly cared about my reputation and intended to quietly call off the engagement, you wouldn't have brought so many soldiers to force your way into my Lu family home today. You've already pushed things to the extreme, yet you still try to make your words sound pleasant. Young Master Shui, there's no need for that. Even if you don't take today's matter to heart, my Lu family will not let it pass lightly. Guards, go to the capital prefecture and report that someone has forged evidence in an attempt to frame a loyal official. The steward, who had been hiding to the side, immediately straightened up and dashed out in a flash. Shui Sai grew anxious in an instant. Lu Huaisu, are you insane? Don't you care about your own reputation anymore? I sneered as I looked at Shui Sai. Mr. Shui, do you think my reputation would be any better if I didn't make a big deal out of this? Your Shui family sent a junior to my house alone to break off the engagement. If this matter succeeds, it will be tantamount to confirming that my Lu family has something to hide. You clearly left me no way out when you came, so why pretend to be a saint now? Shui Sai clenched his fists tightly. Let us break off the engagement. I will cover for you. After all, we've known each other for a while, and I don't want to hold you back for a lifetime. I gave my mother and sister-in-law a reassuring look, then smiled as I turned to Shui Sai. Thank you for your kindness, Master Shui, but it's unnecessary. My Lu family, as military generals, command 200,000 armored cavalry guarding the nation's borders, and we cannot afford any mistakes. Now someone can steal my personal belongings right under my nose, even forge my handwriting. Who knows if this person might later use my name to correspond with my father and brothers. Tarnishing my reputation is a small matter, but framing loyal officials is a grave one. Although I, Lu Huaisu, am merely a daughter of the inner chambers, I have been taught since childhood by my father and brothers, and I understand the principles of loyalty to the sovereign and love for the country. Preventing minor issues from escalating is also for the safety of the people of Daeong and the stability of the border. Mr. Shwe, there's no need to worry about me, no matter the consequences. Lu Huaisu, will take full responsibility. Mr. Shwe, the situation in my inner courtyard is unclear. Let's simply discuss it at the Jingzhou Prefecture office. Please, I said, walking out with determined steps. Behind me, Shwe Sai was grinding his teeth so hard they nearly shattered. He had never imagined that things would develop in this direction, but there was no room for him to back down now. Watching my retreating figure, a murderous intent filled Shwe Sai's eyes. Even if I'm difficult to deal with, so what? He was well prepared. Lord Song of the Jingzhou Prefecture had not relaxed his frown since receiving the news. One is the legitimate daughter of a first-rank auxiliary general, one is the nephew of consort Shwe in the palace. The young General Shwe who has just returned to the capital after achieving a great feat. He couldn't afford to offend either of them. If it were just an ordinary matter, it might have been fine. But this involved the reputation of a noble lady. If handled poorly, it could cause a citywide scandal. Magistrate Song originally intended to invite me, Shwe Sai, and the others to the inner hall for a discreet inquiry, but I politely declined. Thank you for your kindness, Lord Song, it's just that, as you can see, young Master Shwe barged into my home with so many people, and then he went on to ruin my reputation right at the front gate. If your honor truly intends to handle this case discreetly, the common people, unaware of the truth, might indeed think my Lu family is in the wrong. Today, right here in the main hall of the capital prefecture, I am willing to confront young Master Shwe face to face. Let the people of the capital bear witness to who is right and who is wrong. Magistrate Song wore a troubled expression, and Shwe Sai's face also looked rather unpleasant. Miss Lu, you must think this through. If we proceed to a public trial, I won't be able to help cover for you anymore. I remained as steady as a mountain. Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Shwe, but it's unnecessary. Let's make everything clear in front of everyone. Don't worry, if Magistrate Song makes things difficult, I will go and sound the grievance drum. I shall report this matter to the heavens and request the involvement of the 3 judicial offices. By then, justice will surely be served for young Master Shwe. With things having reached this point, there is no longer any room for reconciliation between me and Shwe Sai. By now, Lord Song has also gained some clarity on the situation. If I were truly in the wrong, I would not have insisted on escalating this matter. On the contrary, if Shwe Sai had solid evidence in hand, he could have simply asked his elders to quietly withdraw from the engagement, now that things have escalated to this point. It is clear that he intends to use rumors to pressure the Lu family. Magistrate Song had no choice but to take his seat in the hall and loudly question Shwe Sai. Neither of the 2 pieces of evidence presented by Master Shwe is sufficient to directly prove Miss Lu's lack of virtue. Does Master Shwe have any other solid evidence? Shwe Sai glared at Magistrate Song with displeasure. I have already submitted my evidence. Shouldn't Miss Lu now find a way to prove her innocence? Why should it be considered fake just because she says the evidence is false? Lord Song truly looked down on Shwe Sai's petty trick of using the reputation of women in the inner household to scheme for his own benefit. Miss Lu, do you have anything to say? I didn't want to put him in a difficult position either, sir. My entire Lu family will fully cooperate with the investigation of the capital prefecture. You may order someone to go to the Lu residence immediately to interrogate all the servants in my courtyard. If someone has secretly kept my handwriting or stolen my handkerchief, it is impossible for them not to have left any traces. There are not many people in my courtyard who could have access to these items. A single interrogation will reveal the truth. Lord Song nodded and gave a meaningful glance to the constable standing nearby. The latter gave a slight nod and led the others away. Shwe Sai was displeased. Does Lord Song intend to extract a confession through torture? Magistrate Song was completely stunned. If it weren't for the sake of the Shui family's reputation, he would have really wanted to scold Shui Sai harshly. Master Shui, if you are dissatisfied with the way I am handling this case, you are free to report it to the 3 judicial officers. I believe the Dali Temple will certainly be able to ensure justice for you. Master Shui, don't you agree? Shui Sai's expression stiffened, realizing he had spoken out of turn. After he returned to the capital on his own merits, everyone praised and flattered him. This led him to become momentarily carried away, truly believing that the whole world should cater to his whims. Lord Song ignored his awkward expression. I have already arranged for the servants of the Lu family to be interrogated. So, Mr. Shui, do you have any other solid evidence in your possession? Shui Sai knew that the current situation was unfavorable to him. To resolve the matter quickly, he had no choice but to play his trump card ahead of time. Yes, I have a witness. I know who committed adultery with Miss Lu. Boom. The onlookers instantly erupted into discussion. If they had any doubts about the authenticity of the farce just moments ago, Shui Sai's certainty now caused everyone's gaze toward me to shift instantly. Shui Sai was quite pleased with the current direction of public opinion, glancing at me with a raised chin. I instinctively furrowed my brow, my emotions a tangled mess. Has Shui Sai gone completely mad? The most favorable situation for him right now would be for a servant in my household to admit to stealing my belongings and tarnishing my reputation. Shui Sai only needs to apologize accordingly, claiming he was deceived by a villain. In this way, although the Shui family would be in the wrong, they could at least preserve their last shred of dignity. But what does it mean that he arranged for a witness? Does he not realize that the more evidence he forges, the more flaws there will be? By then, the charges he fabricated against his fiancé will truly be confirmed. Facing the probing gazes of everyone in the room fixed on me, I remained calm and composed. In that case, please have Lord Song summon the relevant parties for an immediate confrontation. I too would like to know with whom I have committed adultery. Which immortal gentleman has been in such a long and intimate relationship with me? Yet I remain unaware. The Lu family has heard no rumors, and the Shui family has caught no wind of it. And yet, the young Master Shui, who has just returned to the capital, knows all the details clearly. Magistrate Song desperately suppressed the corners of his mouth and ordered someone to summon the adulterer mentioned by Shui Sai. It was a full half-hour later that my rumored paramour finally made his belated appearance. I looked at the utterly ordinary, almost unfamiliar face before me and asked sincerely, "Might I ask, sir, who you are?" Shui Sai was displeased. "What are you pretending for?" Shu Cheng was so nervous that he kept swallowing, and could only start by introducing himself to Lord Song. "I am Shu Cheng, son of Shu Hengyuan, the chief clerk of the court of the Imperial Stud." Even Lord Song, who had seen much of the world, couldn't help but twitch at the corner of his mouth at this moment. The only daughter of a first-rank auxiliary general, betraying her promising fiancé, yet she is deeply in love with an ordinary young man from a low-ranking official's family. No, is this reasonable? How could these two even have met? And now, finally seeing the adulterer for the first time, I can't help but sigh. Truly, fortune favors the bold. Shu Cheng was a head shorter than Shui Sai, and his body was hunched over from nervousness, with an ordinary face that would be lost in a crowd. Standing next to Shui Sai, who had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes, he could only be described as ugly. The voices of the onlookers grew louder, and no one believed I would choose Shu Cheng over Shui Sai. Seeing Shui Sai's increasingly gloomy expression, I could only kindly explain on his behalf, "Everyone, don't think that way. What if I only care about character?" Boom! A burst of uproarious laughter erupted outside the Yamen. Shui Sai's face darkened even more. Magistrate Song struck the gavel, and the scene instantly fell silent. "Shu Cheng, young Master Shui claims that you have an affair with Miss Lu. Do you admit it or not?" Shu Cheng nervously knelt down immediately. I admit it, Miss Lu and I are in love with each other. She has sneaked out many times to meet me in secret. That handkerchief was given to me by her own hand, and those letters, all were written to me by Miss Lu. She once said she would marry no one but me, although Shu Cheng was terrified. His words were quite firm. At this point, all the preparations Shui Sai had made to frame me finally came to light. If I hadn't unexpectedly insisted on escalating the matter, the evidence they held would have been enough to drown me in rumors. Once I succumbed to the pressure and ended my own life, who in this world would still care about the truth of the matter? I don't know whether Shu Cheng was coerced or tempted, but since he dared to act as an accomplice and tarnish my reputation, he shouldn't blame me for being ruthless and leaving him no way out. I stepped forward with a smile, facing a room full of skeptical gazes. Mr. Shu, do you see clearly? Was it I who exchanged secret letters with you and met you in private on multiple occasions? Shu Cheng didn't even dare to look up and meet my eyes. Susu, I know you can't bear to part with the wealth and status of the Shui family, but you and I have already been intimate. I can't bear to see you marry someone else. Now that Mr. Shui has agreed to call off the engagement, you should just accept it. I will treat you and our child well in the future. The murmurs rose again, but it wasn't me who was thrown into a panic. Shui Sai must be absolutely furious with Shu Cheng right now. The essence of spreading rumors is to keep things vague, letting the audience fill in the blanks with their own imagination. Yet he went and fabricated everything in such meticulous detail. Isn't that just handing others the chance to verify it? But Shui Sai is overthinking it. I won't stoop to such a low-level method to prove my innocence. I calmly straightened my sleeves and glanced around at everyone. The murmurs in the room abruptly ceased, and everyone could see the unwavering confidence on my face. Mr. Shui, Mr. Shu, although your malicious scheme may not be meticulously planned, it is more than enough to tarnish the reputation of a young lady. It's just a pity that despite all your calculations, you never expected me to insist on bringing this matter into the open. You think the Lu family will suppress this matter to protect my reputation. Amidst the rumors and gossip, I would be left speechless, and in the end, you would get your way. Master Shui single-handedly managed to call off the marriage arranged by Her Majesty the Empress Dowager, and even made the Lu family take the blame, and Master Shu, by risking little to gain much, though his reputation may suffer. If he can marry the daughter of the Assistant General, it would be considered a sudden rise to power. Seeing that Shui Sai was about to retort, I raised my hand slightly to stop him. Don't be in such a hurry, young Master Shui. I will give you a chance to prove yourself later. For now, why not listen to my speculation? Our engagement was arranged by the late Empress Dowager, and over the years, I have never heard of the Shui family expressing dissatisfaction with the marriage, yet. As soon as you returned to the capital after being away for half a year, you rushed to break off the engagement, even at the risk of breaking ties with the Lu family. Forgive my bluntness, but does young Master Shui have someone in his heart? Your impatience suggests that the one you love cannot wait any longer. Could it be that she is already with child? The elders of the Shui family are unwilling to let you offend the Lu family for this reason, so they do not approve of your beloved entering the household. On one hand, you don't want to wrong her by making her a concubine, and on the other hand, you want to bring her into your home as soon as possible. Since you couldn't persuade the elders in your family, you simply saw me as an easy target. You thought that as long as you ruined my reputation, the Shui family would naturally not insist on you marrying me. Even if the marriage was granted by the Empress Dowager, you would still have a justifiable reason and wouldn't lose the support of the people. Master Shui has only recently returned to the capital, with little time to make thorough arrangements or careful plans, so whether you used Master Shu to frame me or bribed someone in my household to steal my handwriting and handkerchief, None of it could be executed flawlessly or without risk. The only thing you were betting on was that the Liu family wouldn't dare to make the matter public. But Shui Sai, you overestimate yourself and underestimate the dignity I possess as the legitimate daughter of the Liu family. If I were to be tricked by such petty schemes, wouldn't that bring disgrace upon the entire Liu clan? I care not for my marriage to you. But I will never allow the reputation of the Liu family's daughters to be tarnished. So, Shui Sai, today's matter cannot be settled peacefully after all. My father and brothers have guarded the nation's borders and protected the people in harsh, bitter lands for many years. Our Liu family does not seek merit. But we cannot tolerate our women and children being bullied by others. Now, you have merely achieved some minor success in suppressing bandits. Yet you dare to trample on the dignity of our Liu family like this. If one day you rise to great heights, will you still hold the laws and customs of Great Yong in any regard? Compared to Shui Sai's furious glare, Shu Cheng's face was already ashen. I gave him a disdainful glance. Young Master Shu, you may not know this, but I am in charge of the household affairs at the Liu family. Since I was 13, every person I meet and every task I do has been planned and recorded. Young Master, why not state the dates of our secret meetings, and let's see if they match the records in my household. When we met, which maid was with you, which servant boy, and was there a coachman? Have we been to a tea house, a theatre, a tavern? Who are the witnesses? Feel free to speak, young master. I believe Magistrate Song and the people present here are fair and discerning, and they will surely grant you justice. Shu Cheng collapsed to the ground, his clothes completely soaked through with cold sweat. The situation had now reached a point where Shui Sai's flawed and error-ridden plan was officially declared a failure. Watching the maids from my courtyard being escorted back by the officials, the chain of evidence was finally complete. The third-class maids in my courtyard barely had any opportunity to access my study. She received a considerable amount of silver through intermediaries, and her task was to steal my personal belongings and past manuscripts. The capital prefecture did not announce the verdict in court. The matter of my reputation being slandered has become very clear. Shu Cheng's fate will be determined by the law. As for whether I will hold Shui Sai accountable, that is another matter. As long as I, the victim, do not submit a formal complaint, the capital prefecture has no reason to invite trouble upon itself. Will I pursue it? Naturally, I will not. Shui Sai acted recklessly today, clearly without consulting his elders. His words and actions do not represent the Shui family's stance, and I will not escalate this into a conflict between our two families. We are both prominent families in the capital. If we cannot form a marriage alliance, it is fine, but we should try our best to avoid making enemies. Regarding my high-profile counterattack, both my mother and my sister-in-law were left with lingering fear. Whether to continue fulfilling the marriage agreement with the Shui family is something they are actually quite hesitant about. Given how things have escalated, our family certainly wouldn't want to wrong Susu. But this marriage was decreed by the Empress Dowager. Can it really be so easily dismissed? Sister-in-law also wore a worried expression. Mother, should we write to father and ask for his opinion on the matter? I peeled the orange with a calm expression. I'll write it. Just informing father and elder brother about the whole story. Don't worry, father will definitely submit a memorial to His Majesty, requesting the annulment of the marriage between the two families. My sister-in-law sat down beside me and poured me a cup of tea. Why are you so certain, Susu? Although the emperor has his reasons for annulling the marriage arranged by the Empress Dowager, it is inevitable that it will provoke criticism. There is no guarantee that His Majesty will not simply settle the matter quietly, allowing the Shui family to make a small concession and let it go. I shook my head with a smile. Mother, sister-in-law, rest assured, father knows what he is doing. Your Majesty is the one who least wishes to see the Shui and Lu families unite in marriage. He will surely seize the opportunity to vent our anger for us. Seeing that my sister-in-law was still somewhat confused, I decided to make things clear. Father and eldest brother command 200,000 elite cavalry, the most formidable border army within the Great Yong territory, and the Shui family also hails from a military background. The nearest garrison to the capital is under the command of the Shui family. How could His Majesty be willing to see the two great military generals in the court form an alliance? Moreover, the Shui family is the maternal clan of the third prince. If the Shui family's power becomes too strong, the crown prince would find himself in an awkward position in the court. His Majesty established the crown prince early precisely to prevent other princes from harboring delusions of grandeur. The Empress Dowager comes from the Shui family. When she arranged the marriage between the two families, she was actually building support for the third prince. Now it may seem that the Lu family is deliberately defying the Empress Dowager's wishes, but in truth, it is a reflection of our loyalty to the emperor and our sincere devotion to the country. Sister-in-law couldn't help but press further. Will the Shui family be willing? I let out a scornful laugh. It's not their family's turn to speak. In fact, the Shui family is already making efforts to recover. I heard that Shui Sai was subjected to family discipline that very day, with General Shui flying into a great rage. If it weren't for Mrs. Shui desperately holding her back, her legs would probably be broken by now. The Shui family didn't dare wait until the next day. They came to my home that very day with generous gifts to apologize, but my house was tightly shut, giving them no chance to speak. In the following days, the Shui family invited countless mediators, but without exception, all were turned away at the door. The Shui family's current low posture was already meaningless. This is no ordinary conflict between two households. It is Shui Sai, presuming upon his own merits, insulting the family members of a high-ranking official. Framing your own fiancé to tarnish her reputation is a low blow in terms of character. The rumors and gossip that Shui Sai had originally planned to heap upon me have now all backfired onto his own head. I wonder how the Shui family feels about the gossip spreading throughout the entire capital. Later, I heard that this matter even alarmed the imperial censor, who publicly denounced the Shui family for failing to discipline their son and for their corrupt family values. It nearly caused old General Shui to faint from anger. A month later, my father submitted a memorial to the emperor, earnestly requesting the annulment of the marriage alliance between the two families. As expected, the emperor seized the opportunity to completely sever the Shui family's hopes. The imperial edict, originally prepared to reward Shui Sai for his meritorious service in suppressing bandits, was now set aside and not mentioned. Shui Sai's future prospects were likely ruined. My sister-in-law, fearing that I might be troubled by this matter, even went out of her way to ask someone to gather gossip to cheer me up. Susu's guess that day was spot on. That scoundrel from the Shui family was indeed carrying on an affair with his subordinate sister during the bandit suppression campaign. I heard the Shui family has been in turmoil for days, with Shui Sai acting as if he'd rather die than live. Old General Shui was originally adamantly opposed, but now no respectable family's daughter is willing to marry him. Madame Shui had no choice but to compromise and secretly brought the pregnant woman into their home, though it remains to be seen whether she will ultimately be given the status of a proper wife. I smiled faintly, showing no interest in the matter of Shui Sai. However, though I wished to keep a low profile, the Shui family refused to let me off. Imperial consort Shui summoned me to the palace, intending to personally apologize to me on behalf of Shui Sai. Facing the woman who had ruined her nephew's future, it was truly difficult for her to maintain a kind and gentle demeanor while showering me with praise. I was just forcing myself to go through the motions, but halfway through the banquet, I finally began to appreciate the flavor. This consort Shwe was actually hinting, in so many words, that I could become the third prince's concubine. I was both shocked and amused by the greed and foolishness of the Shwe family. The third prince's concubine. Oh, it seems that consort Shwe believes that since I have broken off the engagement with her nephew, allowing me to marry into the position of a prince's principal consort would be a slap in the face to her own family, since I cannot become the principal wife of her nephew. Then I shall become a concubine for her son. This way, she gains the military support of my family while also saving face. Before leaving the palace, I happened to meet the crown prince in the imperial garden. Although Nan Jingchuan is experienced and steady, he is still young after all, and it's only natural for him to be curious about such a major piece of gossip in the capital. I looked at his expression, torn between wanting to ask and feeling too embarrassed. With a face full of speechlessness, and coldly changed the subject. The noble consort is overly concerned and thus flustered. Acting in haste is understandable. However, there are some matters that Your Highness should also plan for sooner rather than later. After I finished speaking, I bowed and left, leaving Nan Jingchuan standing there in a daze for a long time. Consort Shwe intended to win me over, but she wouldn't dare to bring up old matters again so quickly. Not to mention whether my family would agree, His Majesty would never allow her to act recklessly. Although I didn't end up with a tarnished reputation due to Shwe Sai's scheme, I wasn't in a much better position either. I come from a prominent family, with a strong and unyielding personality, and I act with boldness and decisiveness. In the capital, there are only a handful of families of comparable status who would accept such behavior from me. My mother and sister-in-law, who had previously been at ease, began to worry about my marriage prospects, their brows furrowing with concern. In the capital, the winds of change are unpredictable, and surprises always come without warning. My own affairs are truly insignificant. The Crown Prince, acting on behalf of His Majesty to inspect disaster relief efforts, was ambushed on his return journey, and his fate remains uncertain. His Majesty dispatched all of his most trusted aides, determined to bring his son back to the capital at all costs. Half a month later, the Crown Prince and his entourage finally arrived in the capital with great discretion. The Empress left the palace that very day and moved into the Crown Prince's residence, where the elite of the Imperial Medical Bureau also gathered. However, rumors from the capital were not optimistic. It was said that the Crown Prince had not regained consciousness to this day, and no one dared to guarantee that he would definitely pull through this ordeal. The Emperor was furious and issued an edict on the spot to thoroughly investigate the attack on the Crown Prince. The court was filled with tension and suspicion, and all celebrations and weddings in the capital were cancelled, leaving only undercurrents swirling beneath the surface. A month had passed, and there was no progress in the case of the Crown Prince's assassination attempt. The Ministry of Justice and the Dali Temple worked together to investigate, yet they couldn't even identify a single suspect. It wasn't that there were none, but rather the evidence was insufficient, and those handling the case dared not act rashly. The case has made no progress, and the Crown Prince's injuries have shown no signs of improvement. According to rumors from the Imperial Hospital, the Crown Prince is now barely clinging to life. If it weren't for the priceless and rare treasures keeping him alive, he would have passed away a month ago. In the end, the Emperor and Empress had no choice but to suppress their grief and begin preparing for the Crown Prince's funeral arrangements, and one of them is to select a consort for the Crown Prince. Once the Crown Princess is chosen, she can later adopt a royal descendant, ensuring the Crown Prince has an heir to carry on his lineage. In fact, the Emperor and Empress already had someone in mind, and the elders were all tacitly aware of it. However, the candidate is the granddaughter of the Grand Princess, a noble and distinguished member of the royal family. It is no longer appropriate to bring up the matter of their marriage now. We must start the selection process anew. After observing coldly for a long time, I felt that I could not let go of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Despite my mother and sister-in-law's reluctance, I still requested an audience before Her Majesty the Empress. I vow to remain chaste and loyal to the Crown Prince, unwavering in my devotion from beginning to end. My father and brother wrote letters to dissuade me, but I explained it clearly enough. The power and influence of my Liu family have already been coveted by Consort Shui and the Third Prince's faction. Sooner or later, they will resort to any means to coerce us, and by then, whether the Liu family complies or not, we will be forced into a passive position. Rather than being forced into the game, it is better to make an active choice. And my marriage into the Crown Prince's residence is the best opportunity. Amidst the current chaos, His Majesty will not doubt the loyalty of the Liu family, even if the Shui family ultimately gains power. No, the Shui family will certainly not succeed. I believe that even without concrete evidence in hand, His Majesty knows who is behind this poisoning of the Crown Prince, not to mention that His Majesty still has the 5th and 6th princes, even if only the 3rd prince remained. With his history of harming his own brothers, His Majesty would not let him have his way. On the 18th day of the 12th lunar month that year, I had a symbolic wedding with the Crown Prince. After the wedding, even though I held the title of Crown Princess, I still could not see the Crown Prince. To show my sincerity, I went to his courtyard several times, but each time, I was stopped by the eunuch in charge arranged by the Empress, right outside the door. The capital was blanketed in heavy snow for 3 consecutive days. In the pure white, silent courtyard, only a few lines of footprints from the servants remained. I looked around the courtyard, which was clearly draped with red silk yet felt as cold and desolate as a funeral, and silently walked out. From then on, I began to pay attention to the Crown Prince's diet. To be honest, it could hardly be called a diet, it was just various medicinal soups, precious herbs, some familiar and some unfamiliar, filled the small kitchen of the Crown Prince's residence. After staying inside for a long time, one would inevitably be soaked in the scent of medicine. I sighed softly, already having a plan in mind, and began to reduce my food intake to lose weight. Before the new year, news once again spread in the capital that the Crown Prince was critically ill. I personally went to Hugua Temple to pray for the Crown Prince's recovery and coincidentally ran into Lady Shui, who had also come to offer incense. The relationship between our two families is delicate, and she originally had no intention of striking up a conversation. It was only because she saw my haggard appearance and emaciated figure that she felt compelled to offer a few polite words of comfort. That day, the rumors grew increasingly intense, with some even beginning to fabricate stories that the royal family intended for the Crown Princess to be buried alive. After returning to the mansion, I wiped the pale powder from my face while being utterly stunned by the rumors. Who in their right mind would spread such a rumor? You're the one who should be buried with the dead. After nightfall, as I was eating fruit and reading a book, a large hand suddenly landed on my shoulder. Even though I had mentally prepared myself, I was still startled by his sudden appearance. I turned around and, sure enough, saw Nan Jingchuan's slender yet handsome face. I put on a look of panic. Your Highness. Your humble consort greets your Highness. How could you? Nan Jingchuan laughed out loud. Susu, you performed quite well at the temple today. Why have you regressed in front of me? I had no choice but to stand up, swallowing the fruit in my mouth. Your Highness flatters me. Nan Jingchuan smiled and sat down opposite me. When did Susu find out? I've always prided myself on being flawless. Now it seems I still can't fool the clever ones. I wonder who else outside has seen through it. I poured a cup of hot tea and brought it to him. Your Highness worries too much. No one outside will notice your disguise. After all this time, am I not the only one in the household who has had any suspicions? Everyone else is convinced of your critical illness. Nan Jingchuan raised an eyebrow. waiting for my answer. I didn't hide it from him. I previously visited your courtyard under the pretense of paying a visit. A few days ago, there was continuous heavy snowfall in the capital. And the courtyard of your highness has not been cleared. The footprints of the servants are clearly visible, which is the flaw. Those rows of footprints vary in depth. Logically, women being lighter in weight should leave shallower footprints, but in your highness's courtyard, it is just the opposite. There are two distinct sets of footprints, clearly belonging to a man, yet they tread lightly on the snow, leaving only faint traces, a testament to his remarkable skill. If your highness were truly in a life-threatening situation, there would be no need for elite hidden guards to come and go from this room. It is evident that their visits here are for the purpose of discussing important matters with your highness. Seeing Nan Jingchuan nodding repeatedly, I continued to elaborate. Moreover, the medicinal herbs stored in the small kitchen, though mostly rare and precious, are not commonly seen. But when I was young, I had the chance to follow military doctors and gain some experience, knowing that some of these herbs have conflicting properties. Your highness is of such noble status, how could the imperial physicians serving you make such a mistake? Therefore, it is clear that this person is a trusted confidant of your highness, and those life-saving decoctions were merely brewed for outsiders to see. Nan Jingchuan's gaze toward me had completely changed. He remained silent for a long while, then elegantly took a sip of tea. Susu's exceptional intelligence aside, the fact that you've been so honest about all this, I suspect you have another request, don't you? Conversing with a clever person truly saves a lot of trouble. I put down what I was holding and looked seriously into his eyes. Your Highness, when I recommended myself to be the crown princess, I truly believed in the chess game you had set up. I have no intention of climbing the social ladder. Nor do I dare to aspire to the position of crown princess, let alone the future role of empress. You are also aware of the various rumors about me that have circulated in the capital before. I acted impulsively and recklessly, unfit for such a great responsibility. I truly fear that any mistakes I make in the future might implicate my father and brothers. So, Your Highness, if I were to cooperate with you now and see this play through to the end, once the dust has settled and Your Highness has secured victory from afar, could you allow me to leave? Nan Jingchuan looked at me with a half-smile, yet he did not respond to my suggestion for a long time. TSK, the royal family is heartless, and the emperor's heart is as hard as iron. Just as I began to curse with my expression, Nan Jingchuan finally couldn't hold back and laughed. Pardon token. What, if I succeed? I will grant the Liu family a pardon token. That way, you won't have to worry about implicating your father and brothers. As for other matters, we can discuss them later. What an unexpected delight. Fearing that Nan Jingchuan might go back on his word, I quickly sealed the promise with a high five. Since Nan Jingchuan dared to show himself in front of me, there's no need to hide the assassination attempt from me. It was indeed the third prince's men who tried to kill me. Fortunately, thanks to Susu's reminder that day, I was prepared in advance, which prevented them from succeeding. However, since they dared to make a move against the crown prince, they must have been fully prepared. Both my father and I have people investigating, but so far, the results have been minimal. I rested my chin on my hand and thought for a moment, and indeed, I had some ideas. Your Highness, I have some humble opinions. Please don't laugh when I share them. You first revealed your whereabouts at the border between Li and Heng prefectures, and as soon as you set foot in Heng prefecture, you were immediately ambushed, correct? Nan Jingchuan nodded. Yes. It seems the assassins had long been lying in wait within the borders of Hangzhou. I didn't quite agree with his statement. Your Highness, I actually think Lizhu is more suspicious than Hangzhou. The assassins intended to ambush the crown prince, obtaining information from the border between the two provinces and carrying out the assassination within Hangzhou. This arrangement was too short in duration, making it difficult to execute thoroughly. If they wanted to ensure absolute success, they must have already been tracking His Highness within Lizhu. Moreover, without inside assistance, the information would not have been so precise. Nan Jingchuan was indeed impressed with me. He naturally had this suspicion as well, but after several thorough investigations, not the slightest flaw was exposed throughout the entire officialdom of Lizhu. I tried hard to recall the information in my mind and finally remembered something. Your Highness, are you aware of the Zhongwu garrison army near Lizhu? Nan Jingchuan was taken aback, not understanding what this had to do with the garrison. I smiled and cleared up his confusion. Your Highness, it is not that I am overly suspicious. But the more tightly knit Lizhu appears, the more it arouses suspicion. Even if you were to thoroughly investigate the capital right now, under the Emperor's very nose, it would be hard to guarantee that everything is flawless. It is a remote prefecture in Lizhu, without prior preparation. How could one retreat unscathed? But if there is any weakness in Lizhu, it lies in the discord between the official circles of Lizhu and the Zhongwu garrison army. This is no secret among military officers. The relationship between stationed troops and nearby government offices has always been delicate. However, it is indeed rare for conflicts to escalate to the point of being as irreconcilable as in Lizhu. If Your Highness wishes to investigate Lizhu, why not make use of the garrison's forces? Nan Jingchuan suddenly affectionately pinched the tip of my nose. Susu, you don't know this, but my people have already looked into it. And the garrison has found nothing either. Caught off guard, I blushed deeply and took a long moment to regain my train of thought. Your Highness, you really are. Seeing him smile without speaking, I quickly continued with the main matter. Your Highness, the crime of plotting against the Crown Prince is equivalent to treason, a matter that could lead to the extermination of entire families. Even if the garrison forces have deep-seated grievances with the officials of Lizhu, they would not dare to wade into this muddy water at such a time. Snakes have their paths, and rats have their ways. In most places, the underworld of the back alleys tends to have good relations with the local garrison. Your Highness's people might as well start from the criminal underworld. They are sure to dig up plenty of dirt on the officials of Lizhu, even if it has nothing to do with the Crown Prince's attack for now. Once the opening is torn, it will be much easier for Your Highness to investigate anything else. Rest assured, as long as the garrison does not intervene directly, they will remain safe. So they will certainly not miss this opportunity to retaliate against the local authorities. With the military's tacit approval, the underworld will also cooperate much more readily. Your Highness, by following the clues, you are sure to uncover traces of evidence. There are no walls in this world that don't let wind through. By working both openly and covertly, I don't believe our opponent can plan for every contingency. After my impassioned speech, I turned around only to see Nan Jingchuan smiling at me. I awkwardly scratched my cheek. Well, I was just showing off. Nan Jingchuan gently patted my head. No, it is I who should thank Susu. I have my own advantages from being born into a military family, so my reminders can indeed help Nan Jingchuan break the deadlock, although the Crown Prince was initially clumsy. He is, after all, the heir to the throne. Once he grasped the method, it was as if he had divine assistance. The plot by Consort Shui and the third prince to harm the Crown Prince soon made progress. Within the court and beyond the palace walls, there are no true secrets in this capital. Discussions about how His Majesty will hold Consort Shui and the third prince accountable have grown increasingly heated, once again tightening the atmosphere in the city. The sword hanging over the Shui family's neck has finally driven them to madness. On an ordinary late night, Consort Shui and her son, in collusion with the Shui family, Had old General Shui personally lead 200 trusted followers to storm the imperial palace, under the pretext of purging the court. They sought to execute the empress and force His Majesty to issue an edict, immediately abdicating in favor of the third prince. While the mantis stalks the cicada, the oriole waits behind. By allowing the rumors to spread until now, Nan Jingchuan was forcing the Shui family to rebel. 200 soldiers of the Shui family and 500 imperial guards were initially locked in a standoff. It wasn't until Nan Jingchuan and my eldest brother arrived with the Lu family's 3,000 armored troops that the Shui family finally realized the tide had turned against them. My eldest brother shot an arrow through General Shui's throat, leaving the rebel army leaderless. This night of crisis and intricate schemes quietly ended in the dreams of most people. Early the next morning, the power structure in the capital had already been reshuffled. It wasn't until the emperor announced the decree to confiscate property and exterminate the clan that many people belatedly broke into a cold sweat. Meanwhile, I watched my own brother drinking with Nan Jingchuan. Feeling utterly speechless, my eldest brother was completely oblivious to my annoyance and just kept complaining to me. That old man from the Shui family is so cunning, he even knows to hide his precious son away. I'm telling you, I was still thinking yesterday that I must get rid of that bastard Shui Sai. Dare to bully my sister, I'll make sure he dies without a whole corpse. Nan Jingchuan smiled and poured a glass of wine for his brother-in-law. Brother, rest assured. I won't let him off either. I'll definitely vent Susu's anger. The two clinked glasses and drank, with no one paying attention to my frustration. My foolish elder brother doesn't even realize he's been sold out, with so many troops available around the capital. Why would Nan Jingchuan go to the trouble of secretly summoning my brother back from 1,000 miles away? He clearly intends to use the Lu family's merit in rescuing the emperor to secure my position as crown princess. Even if my brother hadn't risked coming to the capital, I had already earned this get-out-of-jail-free card for the Lu family on my own. Now it's done. Both siblings are trapped. Seeing that I was about to roll my eyes to the back of my head, my eldest brother looked puzzled. Susu, what's wrong? Are you feeling unwell? Nan Jingchuan burst into laughter. Big brother, there's no need to worry. Susu is just overjoyed. She always acts like this when she's being coquettish with me. Please excuse her, big brother. My big brother was absolutely delighted. Your Highness and Susu have such a wonderful bond. I really want to crack open his skull with a hammer. We are all born of parents, so how come he understands nothing but fighting? But my eldest brother's openness and straightforwardness have also made me see things clearly. The Lu family needs me to hold the fort in the capital. A minister who assists the state is a vital instrument of the nation. While some fight on the front lines, others must stand at the center of the storm. I glared angrily at Nan Jingchuan, who was holding my hand, and reluctantly sat down beside him. As for the position of crown princess, I certainly deserve it. 8 years later, the emperor fell seriously ill and abdicated the throne. At that time, Nan Jingchuan, who had already consolidated his power and held absolute authority, ascended the throne smoothly, on the 8th day of the 4th lunar month. The new emperor's coronation ceremony and the empress's investiture ceremony were held simultaneously. Nan Jingchuan stood at the highest point in the world, watching me slowly approach him in the auspicious attire of the empress. He gazed at me with deep affection, his eyes and brows filled with a gentle smile. This is the grand wedding I owe Susu, and today I make it up to her. From this day forward, the emperor and empress are of one heart. The sun and moon unite, heaven and earth harmonize. And the seas are calm and rivers clear. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. At the age of 70, the Duke of Zhenghua passed away. While sorting through his belongings, I discovered a stack of portraits, exactly 50 in number. It turns out that for 50 years of marriage, every Chishi festival, he would paint to remember his first love. He claimed that old ailments made marital intimacy unsuitable, leaving me to guard an empty chamber alone, bearing the blame of childlessness and living a solitary life. But in truth, he was preserving his chastity for another woman. Even the adopted daughter I cherished and raised with utmost care turned out to be their illegitimate child. After the Duke of Zhenghua passed away peacefully, I suppressed my grief to handle his funeral arrangements. All the funeral ceremonies and household affairs fell on my shoulders alone, and I managed everything in an orderly manner, just as I had done for the past 50 years. Everyone said that the Duke of Zhenghua, Jiyu Sikhen, and I shared a deep affection, and despite my inability to bear children for decades, he never took a concubine. For 50 years of marriage, I believed the same, until I was sorting through his belongings and discovered a stack of portraits hidden in a secret compartment. Each painting depicted the same woman, signed on every Chishi festival, totaling exactly 50 in all. It was then that I realized, for 50 years, he had remained faithful to another woman. The most absurd part was that, disregarding my dignity as his lawful wife, he left a will stating that the burial plot beside him was to be reserved for the woman in the paintings, Qin Rushuang. He said, "Though I cannot share a bed with Rushing in life, I wish to share a grave with her in death." Yet, I was the last to learn of the contents of this will. I became the laughingstock of the entire capital. They said, Song Wn spent her entire life as the rightful wife, only to be demoted to a concubine in the end, unable to be buried with her husband. My adopted daughter with Jiyu Sikhen, Siqing, came to pay her respects to me. Filled with unease, she stood in the flower hall, somewhat at a loss, and when she looked at me, a flicker of sympathy passed through her eyes. Jiyu Siqing was an orphan that Jiyu Sikhen had picked up from the snow. He said he had an old illness that made him unsuitable for marital relations, and that he could never have children with me in this lifetime, so it would be better to adopt one to bring joy to our home. I had always been obedient to him, so I raised Siqing by my side, teaching her carefully and striving to mold her into a refined young lady. Jiyu Sikhen was a man who didn't know how to take care of children. So Siqing was raised by me alone. I treated her as my own daughter, coddling and doting on her as if she were a treasure in my hands. After standing still for a long time, Siqing seemed to finally make up her mind. She walked up to me and hesitated before saying, "The 9th princess is about to return to the court. With the merit of her marriage alliance, she has petitioned to be included in the Jiyu family register and to be buried with father after her death." I looked at Jiyu Siqing without saying a word. She lowered her head guiltily, her voice barely audible. "I was thinking of father. This is his only dying wish, and we should fulfill it, rather than burying Qin Rushuang and Jiyu Sikhen together. It would be better to directly tell others that Qin Rushuang was truly Jiyu Siqing's wife." I set down the teacup in my hand with a thud. Jiyu Siqing hastily took a step back, not daring to look up, and cautiously added, "If mother truly loved father, please don't let him have any regrets." She hurriedly left the flower hall, and only after her figure had disappeared did Fengxiang, who had grown up with me since childhood, complain. Madame was a heroine in her time and could have inherited the old general's legacy, but she gave up everything for the Duke of Zhenghua. Toiling in the Duke's mansion for 50 years, now that she's gone, they want to demote her from wife to concubine. I truly feel wronged on Madame's behalf. Miss Siqing was also raised with great care by the Madame, yet now she seems to be siding with outsiders. Fengxiang and I have been close since childhood. She knows better than anyone how much effort I have poured into Siqing. If even she feels wronged on my behalf, how could my heart not ache with bitterness? After the funeral rites for the Duke of Zhenghua, the 9th princess returned to the court. The white-haired 9th princess threw herself before Jiyu Siqing's grave, weeping uncontrollably and fainting several times. The deeply moving love story was most sought after by the world, and for a time, the tragic romance between the Duke of Jeanne and the ninth princess spread throughout the capital. They said the Duke of Jeanne was a young hero, and the ninth princess a heroine among women, a perfect match. Yet I, a worthless person, had taken her place. No one remembered that my Song family had once been filled with loyal martyrs who gave their lives for the country. Qin Rushuang personally came to my door, seeking to have me open the ancestral hall and inscribe her name into the family register. Dressed in plain white mourning attire, she looked more like Jiyu Sichen's widow than I did, as a heroic woman who sacrificed herself for the nation by willingly marrying for political alliance. She didn't need my approval at all. The clan elders were more than eager to inscribe her into the family register immediately. She was merely here to mock me, she said. Song Wn. Sikhen and I missed a lifetime together. Now, I have no other wish but to share a burial plot with him after death. I hope you can grant me this. Her words seemed to accuse me of being ungrateful, as if I were the obstacle standing in the way of their union. Jiyu Sicheng stood to the side, unable to hide her excitement as she looked at Qin Rushuang. I suddenly realized with surprise that Jiyu Sicheng's phoenix eyes were exactly the same as Qin Rushuang's. Many past mysteries were suddenly unraveled. No wonder Jiyu Sikhen always stared blankly at Jiyu Sicheng's eyes. It turned out that Sicheng was not an orphan he had picked up at all, but rather his and Qin Rushuang's illegitimate daughter. It seems Jiyu Sicheng also knew her true identity early on, but at that time, Qin Rushuang was still trapped in the southern border, so she had no choice but to rely on me to survive. Now that the mother and daughter have reunited, I have become the unnecessary third party. I smiled faintly and replied, "As you wish." Qin Rushuang was overjoyed and was about to express her gratitude, but I spoke first. Sicheng is the daughter of a princess. Now that the princess has returned with merit, why not take this opportunity to officially acknowledge her? Qin Rushuang widened her eyes, unable to hide her surprise. He didn't even keep this from you. She mistakenly thought Jiyu Sikhen had told me, but I had no intention of explaining it to her. Jiyu Sicheng looked back and forth between me and Qin Rushuang, ultimately acquiescing to my decision. Between a princess mother who had contributed to saving the nation and a 60-year-old woman like me, trapped in the inner chambers, the choice should not be difficult. I paid no heed to Jiyu Sicheng's remorseful gaze and spoke to see her off. "This matter is settled. Princess, please return." With that, I took Fang Hui's hand and left the flower hall. Walking along the corridor of the Duke's residence, memories of the past surfaced before my eyes. On our wedding night, Jiyu Sikhen told me that he suffered from an old ailment that made marital relations unsuitable, leaving me to endure the loneliness of an empty chamber. He knew full well how harsh this world is to women who bear no children, yet he still deceived me. For 50 years, we have treated each other with respect, and he never took a concubine, so I never doubted his words. To protect his pride as a man, I never dared to bring up the matter of intimacy in front of him, yet he had long since had a daughter with Qin Rushuang. I finally understand that it's not that my husband is incapable, but rather that he is incapable with me. I also recall how he named Jiyu Sicheng without a second thought. The two characters Sicheng, I once thought it was taken from the line, sitting and watching the lush green grass. I longingly think of the sunny river bends of the past, but I never imagined that Sicheng actually means thinking of Qin. Jiyu Sicheng. Jiyu thinking of Qin. He is missing the ninth princess who married far away to the southern border. I should hate, yet I cannot even shed a single tear. I just feel that my whole life has been spent in relentless pursuit, only to end up in utter ruin. Truly pitiful. I still remember our wedding night, when I blushed and confessed my feelings to Jiyu Sikhen. I wish to win the heart of one person, and never part until our hair turns white. Now, however, I feel that had I known how deeply it would entangle my heart, I would have wished we never met. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the year of our marriage, the southern border invaded. Capturing several cities in the southern region, Gu Sikhen stayed in the imperial study all night, discussing strategies. I know he has great ambitions, so I take care of his mother and manage the household affairs, ensuring he has no worries. The next day, he returned to the mansion on a white horse. Upon seeing me, he said, "Song Wan, the 9th princess is righteous and willing to marry into the southern border. You should thank her." Before I could respond, he continued, "She sacrificed herself to save tens of thousands of people in the southern border and also the Song family army left behind by your father. In her previous life, Gu Sikhen advocated for a marriage alliance, transforming Qin Rushuang from an overlooked 9th princess into a heroic figure who saved the people. However, the court ceded 13 cities and paid 100,000 taels of gold to the southern border as compensation. The southern border was the land that the Song family had guarded for generations, with every descendant vowing to protect it at all costs. Yet Gu Sikhen surrendered it so easily. Qin Rushuang was born to a palace maid, remained unmarried past the age of 20, and lived alone in the cold palace. The marriage alliance was her only chance to change her fate. Gu Sikhen advised me to give her a chance. Also for the sake of stability in the southern border, but given a second chance, I no longer wish to cede the southern territories that my father and brothers defended with their lives. I firmly said to him, "Gu Sikhen, the southern border was defended with the lives of my father and brothers. I will never yield it." Gu Sikhen did not expect me to argue back, frowning as he said, "You are already my wife. Wouldn't it be better to quietly fulfill your role as Lady Gu? Why must you involve yourself in matters of the southern border?" I scoffed lightly. "Marriage alliances are the actions of cowards. The children of the Song family would rather die than surrender." Gu Sikhen seemed somewhat shaken. He wrapped his arm around my shoulder and said, "My lady, I know you are loyal to the sovereign and love your country, a woman no less heroic than any man, but Rushuang once showed me kindness in my youth, and her situation in the palace is difficult. A marriage alliance is her only way out. Please, won't you grant her this favor?" "But Gu Sikhen, are you truly doing this to repay a debt of gratitude? You two engaged in an illicit affair, gave birth to a daughter, and now you propose a marriage alliance with the southern border. Isn't it all just to cover up the truth?" I avoided his intense gaze and said in a low voice, "Should we sacrifice the people of the 13 southern cities just for her selfish desires?" Gu Sikhen moved his hand away, anger gathering between his brows. This was the first time I had ever seen him lose his temper. After that day, he never returned to the residence again. I took out the long spear that had been gathering dust for a long time and began practicing with it again. My father never raised me as a girl since I was young. In archery, horsemanship, and shooting, I was no worse than my brothers. But Gu Sikhen didn't like me wielding swords and spears, so after returning to the capital, I sealed all these weapons in my dowry chest and learned to behave elegantly like the noble ladies of the capital, appreciating flowers and sipping tea. Now I understand, it's not that he dislikes me wielding swords and spears, but rather that he dislikes me as a person. The pro-war and pro-peace factions in the court are at each other's throats, yet my petition to join the battle has gone unanswered. After much inquiry, I learned that the emperor never even received my petition. It seems it must have been intercepted by Gu Sikhen. In order to facilitate the marriage alliance, he had the audacity to go this far. With Gu Sikhen's instigation, the peace faction still gained a slight advantage, just as in her previous life. Qin Rushuang was granted the title of Princess Zhaohe and sent to marry into the southern border. On the day the imperial decree was issued, Jiyu Sikhen finally revealed a long-lost smile. He said, "Madam, you can rest assured and stay in the capital as the lady of the Jiyu household. There is no need for you to worry about matters in the southern border. I have loved Jiyu Sikhen for 50 years, setting aside national and familial grudges to wholeheartedly become a virtuous Mrs. Jiyu, yet in his heart, there is only another woman." A sense of desolation spread from my scalp to the soles of my feet, as if all the blood in my body had frozen. Jiyu Sikhen noticed my coldness, reined in his smile, and said softly, "Forget the grudges of your father and brother. From now on, be at peace as my wife." I couldn't help but let out a light laugh. His wife, whose wife would stay alone in an empty chamber for 50 years, whose wife would be deceived by her husband to such an extent. I looked at him coldly, with nothing but disappointment in my eyes. Jiyu Sikhen suddenly seemed at a loss, wanting to take my hand, but I avoided him. I didn't get angry. Instead, I smiled and replied, "I understand." With that, I turned and left, ignoring his attempts to keep me. In the past, I was always the one chasing after him, caring for his well-being, and cooking for him. From now on, that will never happen again. My fingers gently caress the tip of the red-tasseled spear, and I recall my previous life. Trapped within the inner chambers, if the southern border remains unconquered, how could I face the ancestors of the Song family? After the marriage alliance, Qin Rushuang's reputation grew, with everyone praising the 9th princess for her great righteousness and sacrifice for the nation. However, the southern border, having gained 13 cities, grew even more powerful, exploiting the imperial court for over a decade and leaving the great Shang dynasty in a precarious state. And because I adopted Jiyu Siqing, I was confined to the inner chambers, tending to my husband and raising children, missing the best opportunity to revive the Song family army, given a second chance at life. Should I continue to live in mediocrity? A plan began to take shape in my mind. The next day, I went to the palace gate to request an audience with the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager also comes from a military family and was a close friend of my grandmother. However, one entered the deep palace, while the other was stationed in the southern border, so they rarely had any interaction. In my previous life, it was precisely because of the Empress Dowager's affection for me that Jiyu Siqing's career path was smooth, allowing him to ascend to the position of duke at a young age. The Empress Dowager eagerly summoned me for an audience and couldn't help but shed tears when she saw me. However, upon hearing my purpose, she frowned and said, "His Majesty has already issued an edict for the 9th princess to marry for political alliance. Changing the order so quickly would likely invite criticism. I know she won't agree right away, so I calmly reply, I have been well versed in military strategy since childhood and grew up in the army. My father and brothers had already devised a meticulous plan, but before it could be implemented, they sacrificed their lives for the country. Now, only I know the weaknesses of the southern border. This is the best opportunity to strike them hard. In my past life, after the southern border took control of the 13 cities in the southern region, they massacred the people there, burning, killing, and looting, plunging the region into misery. It is clear that a marriage alliance is not a good strategy. It may halt the war temporarily, but it cannot stop it forever. The determination in my eyes moved the Empress Dowager. Seeing her attitude soften, I presented the improved crossbow blueprint to her and briefly outlined the battle plan. After a moment of contemplation, the Empress Dowager said solemnly, "Go ahead, child, do what you wish. As a daughter of a military family, this is how it should be." Before the marriage alliance procession set off, I did not receive the Emperor's edict to dispatch troops. Instead, I was met with the orphaned girl that Jiyu Sikhen had picked up. I almost forgot, at this time, the 9th princess had just returned from the cold palace and was preparing for a political marriage. Qin Rushuang was a nobody, Even if she claimed illness and stayed out of sight for half a year in the imperial harem, no one would bother to inquire, which conveniently allowed her to secretly give birth to a daughter. Ji Sik-hen said this was a child he had picked up by the roadside. With the bitter cold and freezing weather, he couldn't bear to leave her. Recalling my past life, I was moved by his kindness and felt pity for this abandoned baby girl. Looking back now, it's truly laughable to think I was completely manipulated by the two of them. Ji Sik-hen gazed at the child with a very gentle look. Even though the child was crying uncontrollably, he showed no trace of impatience. Instead, he fumbled around, softly soothing the child, which was particularly out of character with his usual aloof demeanor. He looked at me expectantly, hoping I would step forward to lend a hand, but I avoided his gaze, not wanting to go up and help. In my previous life, afraid that crying would harm the child, I would immediately step forward to take her, cradling her in my arms and gently soothing her. Even when Sicheng slept at night, I refused to let anyone else handle it, holding her in my arms myself to comfort her, never getting a full night's sleep. Everyone said that the Duke of Zhun and his wife were kind-hearted, treating even an orphan girl found by the roadside as their own legitimate daughter. Back then, I was still smug about being praised alongside him. Now, I truly feel ashamed of my own foolishness. Seeing me unmoved, Ji Sik-hen had no choice but to hand the child over to the wet nurse for care. He let out a soft sigh and said to me, "Wonwan, the child is innocent. Since we have no children of our own, let's raise her as our own daughter." I smiled faintly and, under his expectant gaze, uttered two words, "No." Ji Sichen's expression froze. He assumed the authority of the head of the household and said, "Why not? Is my Ji family incapable of raising a little girl? You speak so much about the people of the world and the citizens of the southern border. How can you be unwilling to save even a baby in swaddling clothes?" I used to grant his every wish without fail. I took a slow sip of tea and said, "Because I don't have time to take care of her." Ji Sik-hen immediately retorted, "You stay in the mansion all day with nothing to do. How could you not have time? This matter involves confidential state affairs, so there's no need for Lord Ji to know." Without waiting for him to speak, I stood up and left the flower hall. Ji Sik-hen shouted angrily behind me, "Song Dublin, what do you mean by this? Explain yourself clearly." I paid him no mind. I was curious about how Ji Sik-hen would react once the emperor's decree to dispatch troops was issued. On the day Qin Rushuang was sent off for the marriage alliance, the weather was uncooperative, the sky was gloomy and overcast. She sat in the carriage dressed in a red wedding gown, admired by all the people. Ji Sik-hen stood beside the magnificent carriage, wearing robes of the same color as hers. The carriage slowly departed from the palace gate, heading toward the city gate. Ji Sik-hen followed alongside, bowing with each step, chanting, "May the princess be blessed with eternal happiness and endless joy." This scene moved the entire city's people to tears, with everyone praising Ji Sik-hen for his deep loyalty and righteousness, and the ninth princess for her profound understanding of duty. For the sake of the common people, the two lovers, who could not be together, stole the spotlight. Just as the carriage was about to reach the city gate, it was suddenly stopped by a fast-riding palace attendant. By the emperor's decree, the ninth princess is to return to the palace and is exempt from the marriage alliance. Ji Sik-hen and Qin Rushuang were both stunned. What does the eunuch mean by this?
By love that I forgot my responsibilities, but I never expected that, at the last moment. Nanjiang would outsmart us by flanking our camp from the rear. All the capable deputy generals in the army were already assigned their own tasks, and I, stationed at the camp, couldn't leave my post either. I had no choice but to turn to Ji Sik-hen. At least he had served in the military in his youth, which made him better than those inexperienced soldiers. If he was willing to lead troops to intercept the reinforcements from the southern border, the predicament would be easily resolved. But I never expected that Gu Sikhen would choose this moment to trip me up. He said, as long as you promise to commend Rushuang for her merits upon our return to the capital, I will immediately dispatch the troops. Looking at his calm and indifferent expression, I felt the urge to slap him hard for the first time. Thinking this, I did exactly that. In my past life, he rode alone for thousands of miles just to bring Qin Rushuang back to the capital. Now, with the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers at stake, he truly has the nerve to negotiate with me. I didn't look at his badly swollen face again and said calmly, since Lord Gu is unwilling, let's just pretend I never came here today. Gu Sikhen grabbed my sleeve and pressed. Who else can you turn to for help? Are you really going to stand by and watch all our efforts in this battle go to waste? I turned back to look at him and sneered. So you do know that this would ruin all our hard work, but have you ever considered the lives of tens of thousands of soldiers? Have you ever thought about the people of the 13 cities in the southern border? Gu Sikhen was left speechless, simply staring at me in a daze. A sudden wave of indescribable weariness washed over me, and I no longer wished to see her face. I simply said calmly, if you are willing to help me, I will later explain to His Majesty the merits of the 9th princess. As for what is not there, I cannot help you deceive the emperor. Gu Sikhen stared at me in a daze. I carefully straightened the fox fur on his cloak and said softly, I know that in your heart, there is only the 9th princess. He looked at me in shock, his lips parting and closing as if wanting to speak but holding back, perhaps out of guilt toward me. He led his troops and set out overnight. The reinforcements from the southern border in the rear were still not a significant threat and were quickly dealt with, but in the final decisive battle, I was still injured. The enemy's cold arrow struck my chest, missing my heart by a hair's breadth. When I woke up, the military doctor had already bandaged my wound, and several lieutenants were gathered in my tent, looking deeply concerned. They told me that Qin Rushuang had sprained her ankle while fleeing, and Gu Sikhen was taking care of her. Was I disappointed? Yes, a little, for 50 years. I have loved him with all my heart, but the one he loves is not me. At that moment, Song Jing walked in. He sat by my bedside, unable to hide his concern. Wanwan, don't overthink it, focus on recovering your health first. Although he is 3 years younger than me, he has taken care of me like an older brother since he became an adult. In my past life, I received letters from him every year, asking if I was doing well. Seeing him, my heart softened, and I smiled sweetly. I'm fine. I'll recover in a few days. Song Jing tapped my forehead just like when we were kids. You, still so bad at taking care of yourself, stay in the southern border from now on, and I'll make sure to keep a close eye on you. He went on to share many childhood anecdotes, helping to lift my spirits. After Song Jing and his group left, the lights in the tent were turned off, and only then did Gu Sikhen walk in, bringing a chill with him. He tucked the blanket around me and reached out to feel my forehead. In the faint candlelight, the worry in his eyes didn't seem feigned, but when I was nearly at death's door, he was taking care of Qin Rushuang, who had sprained her ankle. I will never measure up to her place in his heart. In my past life, I thought he was only taking extra care of her because of a childhood favor. Given a second chance, I can only blame myself for being blind, failing to notice these subtle clues. He inscribed on the painting, no fate in this life, we shall meet again in the next. Turning all my years of devotion into a joke, I have loved him for 50 years, yet it cannot compare to their 10 years together. Even when I saw the portrait he hid in the secret compartment, I should have held on to a sliver of hope whether there might be a place for me in his heart. But everything that happened today has made me give up completely. I no longer want Gu Sikhen in this life. I let him continue our past fate, I said calmly. After we return to the capital, let's separate. Gu Sikhen immediately looked up at me, a flicker of panic crossing his face. Wanwan, is there some misunderstanding between us? Seeing that I didn't answer, he hurriedly wrapped his arms around me along with the blanket. You once said you wished to win one heart and never part until old age. Do you really want to leave me now? It's rare that he still remembers what I said on our wedding night. But his embrace pressed against my wound, and blood soon seeped through my chest. Wanwan, Gu Sichen's face turned pale with fright, and he hurriedly shouted, Someone come quickly." The military doctor soon entered, examined my wound, and reapplied medicine and bandaged it. "Does Lord Gu not know that the general nearly injured his heart meridian and cannot withstand any disturbance?" Gu Sikhen looked ashamed and dared not meet my eyes. He lowered his posture and asked the military doctor many things to pay attention to, noting them down one by one. "This reminds me of the time in my previous life when I caught a cold, and he also took such meticulous care of me. At that time, I thought this was love, but I later realized it wasn't out of guilt. It was just a bit of kindness he offered out of pity, compared to his intense love for Qin Rushuang. It's truly not worth mentioning. I don't know what mindset he had." But in the following days, Gu Sikhen stayed in my tent, busily taking care of me. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he wouldn't listen. He thought my talk of separation was just a momentary impulse. To cheer me up, Qin Rushuang caught a chill, and he didn't even go to see her. He said he wasn't a doctor, so going would be useless, and added that as his lawful wife, he should be with me. When Song Jing came to see me, Gu Sichen's face visibly darkened. He accused Song Jing of lacking manners and disregarding the boundaries between men and women. Song Jing was a straightforward person who never minced words. He sneered, "If you truly cared for Wanwan, you wouldn't have stayed by another woman's side while she was unconscious." These words flushed Gu Sichen's face with anger, yet he had nothing to say in response. I stopped Song Jing, aging. "Don't get involved in matters between him and me." Gu Sikhen wore a hurt expression. "Song Wn. Are you deliberately trying to provoke me?" I replied. "A Jing is my father's adopted son. We are just siblings. Lord Gu, please don't misunderstand." Gu Sikhen showed a wronged expression. Seeing him act this way, I remained unmoved. Song Jing ultimately took the initiative to leave the tent, giving me the chance to explain clearly. No one was around, and Gu Sikhen knelt on the ground without regard for his dignity. "Wanwan, I was wrong before. Please give me another chance." I softly interrupted his unfinished words. "No fate in this life. We'll meet again in the next. Is that what you're thinking in your heart?" Gu Sikhen stared wide-eyed in shock. He might be wondering how I knew what he was thinking. But isn't this exactly his dying wish from his previous life? Gu Sikhen panicked and grabbed the hem of my clothes, explaining, "Wanwan, I don't have such feelings for her. Please believe me." I shook off her hand and said calmly, "Even if I've misunderstood all of this, what about your daughter with her? Didn't you say you were incapable of sexual relations?" Gu Sikhen slumped to the ground, finally speechless. I reached out to smooth the stray hairs at my temples and said softly, "I don't blame you, I just want to be a mother too." In the past, I was afraid of hurting his pride and never dared to bring up the topic of having children. He said he had an old ailment that prevented him from being intimate. So I remained alone in my empty chamber. Even when I was young and my mother-in-law gave me a hard time, or when the noble women of the capital mocked me as a hen that couldn't lay eggs, I never complained. In the end, he was actually preserving his chastity for another woman. In this life, I won't be so foolish anymore. The battle in the southern borderlands was a great victory. The southern barbarians suffered heavy losses, were driven back to their lairs, and won't be able to cause trouble again for nearly a decade. The scenes of burning, killing, looting, and massacring civilians did not repeat themselves. The triumphant army returns to the capital. As I submit the memorial, I will also request permission to divorce. The court is shocked. To actively seek a divorce, I am the first person in history to do so. My reason is also solid. Gu Sikhen has an affair with the 9th princess, and I am willing to step aside for her. Gu Sikhen pleaded with the emperor to revoke the order, but to no avail. I exchanged it for military power. How could a few words from him change that? Gu Sikhen eventually caught up to the Song family. When I saw him again, I could hardly recognize the once graceful young man. His face was covered in stubble, and his clothes, which he hadn't changed for who knows how many days, were crumpled into a mess. As soon as he saw me, he threw himself at my feet without a second thought. "Wanwan, do you really not want me anymore? You clearly said you would love me for a lifetime." I took 3 steps back, putting distance between us. "If you like the 9th princess, you should bravely ask the emperor for his blessing. Not pester me here." No, that's not it, I've already married you. You are my wife. Tears and snot were smeared all over his face. I had never seen Ji Sikhen look so disheveled. At that moment, I suddenly felt a pang of sorrow for Qin Rushuang. She gave birth to Siqing for him and was confined to the imperial mausoleum for self-reflection. If Ji Sikhen had been willing to take responsibility and bear the blame, he could have saved her life. But he dared not risk angering the emperor for Qin Rushuang's sake. Between Qin Rushuang and me, I was the best choice, which is why he came to beg me. Falling in love with such a man is the sorrow of both of us, Ji Sikhen. If I had known that you would entangle my heart so, I would rather we had never met. I looked into his eyes and said these words earnestly. He shed tears of regret. 50 years of entanglement should come to an end now. I don't regret having loved him, but I won't love him again, in this new life. I no longer wish to be a pet confined to the inner chambers, but rather a free and unrestrained horse. I want to return to the southern border, to the place where I grew up, not long after. I submitted a memorial requesting to lead the Song family army to garrison the southern frontier for the rest of my life. The emperor granted my request and restored my military authority. During my lifetime, the southern frontier dared not invade, and the people of the southern border lived in peace and prosperity. Without my help, Ji Sikhen will never advance beyond a 7th-rank official in this lifetime. Qin Rushuang is confined within the imperial mausoleum, never to leave for the rest of her life. Once celebrated for their tragic love story, the two are now infamous. Countless stories have been written to praise my virtues and condemn their disgraceful actions. I was clad in silver armor, riding a tall horse as I patrolled the border. Someone shot down a wild goose flying in the sky with an arrow. I turned to look and saw Song Jing, dressed in black armor, flashing a bright smile at me. His features were clear and bright. And he held the wild goose out to me, with the wild goose as the betrothal gift and heaven and earth as the matchmaker. Will you marry me, sister? A piece of my heart crumbled. So I too am held in someone's heart, loved with fervor. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.